My initial birthday invitations had been dispatched. 2 weeks later, my brother announced his upcoming barbecue bash. On that very same day, not a solitary soul from my kin attended my birthday celebration, not even my wife or daughter. As I began to cut into the cake, my wife's text arrived. "Call me." It was marked urgent. I glanced at the message and a smile touched my lips. 52 missed calls. You know what's truly amusing about orchestrating your own birthday party? It commences with an utterly preposterous optimism, like stepping out of a sentimental greeting card and into reality. There I was, 3 weeks prior, meticulously browsing restaurant websites as if I were planning the prestigious Academy Awards ceremony. I had every detail meticulously mapped out in my mind. The ideal evening at Marcellos's, that charming, intimate Italian establishment downtown, renowned for its warm breadsticks and wine that doesn't demand a second mortgage payment. Simple yet profoundly significant, right? That's the narrative I repeatedly fed myself as I sent out those invitations. Good heavens, I was such a naive optimist. I genuinely dedicated 45 minutes to crafting the perfect text message for my family. It needed to strike a delicate balance, casual enough to avoid appearing desperate, yet specific enough to convey the importance of the occasion. Hey everyone, birthday dinner at Marcellos's on Saturday the 18th, 7 o'clock in the evening. Hope to see you there. I even appended that rather saccharine smiley face emoji, which I immediately regretted, but pride prevented me from correcting. The replies trickled in with predictable punctuality. "Mom, sounds lovely, sweetheart." "Dad, looking forward to it, son." My brother Ryan responded with a mere thumbs-up emoji, which, in retrospect, should have been my first glaring indicator of trouble. Since when has Ryan ever demonstrated such promptness in communication? That chap typically takes 3 business days to reply to a simple, "What's up?" Julia, however, was on it from the outset. Naturally, she had to be. We operate on a shared digital calendar, a testament to our synchronized lives. Every doctor's appointment, every parent-teacher conference, every routine car maintenance is meticulously color-coded and synced across our devices as if we were managing a Fortune 500 company. She was aware of my birthday dinner the very moment I secured the reservation. In fact, she likely received the notification before I did. And Sophie, my 16-year-old daughter, who currently views me with the same level of enthusiasm as a fanny pack at a music festival, even she seemed genuinely enthusiastic. "That sounds really nice, Dad," she commented, glancing up from her phone for a fleeting 2.3 seconds, which by Sophie's standards is practically an ovation. So there I was, basking in the glow of anticipated family togetherness, already picturing that perfect Instagram-worthy moment when they'd bring out the cake and everyone would collectively belt out that endearingly awkward rendition of "Happy Birthday," which inexplicably grows progressively slower and more off-key with each passing verse. I had even instructed Julia to call ahead and confirm they had those little sparkler candles. You know, the ones that lend an air of festivity but are essentially a fire hazard waiting to happen. The entire week leading up to my birthday felt like a child's countdown to Christmas. I found myself humming absent-mindedly in the shower, exhibiting an unusual level of amiability towards my colleagues, and even allowing that insufferable Henderson to cut in line at the coffee shop. Because frankly, life felt rather grand. My family was going to be there. We were going to share laughter, reminisce about shared memories, and for one evening, I was going to be the undisputed focal point in the most wonderful way possible. Saturday arrived, and I dedicated my morning to an exhaustive house cleaning, as if Martha Stewart herself were scheduled for an inspection. The plan was for everyone to reconvene at my place after dinner for the cake. Not some generic, store-bought sheet cake adorned with floral icing that resembled the work of a colorblind toddler, but a genuine, honest-to-goodness chocolate creation from that esteemed bakery Julia adores, the one where a single cupcake commands a price higher than most people's lunch. But alas, it was my birthday, and I was feeling magnanimous. By 6 o'clock, I was clad in my finest button-down shirt, the deep navy one Julia gifted me for Christmas, which she claims makes my eyes truly pop. I found myself checking my watch every 30 seconds as if expecting a presidential arrival. The reservation was for 7 o'clock, which, in my family's typical fashion, meant an expected arrival closer to 7:15, given that punctuality is a concept rarely embraced by my relatives except perhaps for their own funerals. And even then, I harbor my doubts. 7:15 came and went, then 7:30. By 7:45, I was seated alone at a table for 8, observing the waiter replenishing my water glass with a sympathetic gaze usually reserved for stray puppies. My phone lay dormant on the table, stubbornly silent, save for the occasional chime of a forgotten app notification. It was at this point that my colleagues began to arrive. Bless their hearts, they had actually remembered. Jim from accounting appeared first, looking somewhat bewildered as to why he was the sole attendee. He was followed by Sarah from human resources, bearing a bottle of wine she had likely procured at a gas station en route. Then the Hendersons from next door ambled in, scanning the surroundings as if they had inadvertently stumbled into the wrong movie theater. "Where is everyone?" Sarah inquired, settling into the chair designated for my mother. "Running late," I responded with a fabricated smile, raising my water glass in a mock toast. "You know how family can be." Yet deep down, in that primal instinct where premonitions of misfortune reside, I already knew. The silence from my phone wasn't attributable to traffic jams or unforeseen emergencies. It was the profound emptiness of abandonment, masked by a cordial emoji. We proceeded to order appetizers, engaging in polite small talk about the weather and the latest office gossip. Jim, for the third time that month, recounted that familiar anecdote about his son's Little League game. I feigned laughter at all the appropriate junctures, a desperate attempt to mask the quiet splintering of my heart, akin to aging paint peeling from a porch railing. By 8:30, the waiter presented my cake. Those sparkler candles, the ones I had eagerly anticipated, flickered and danced as my impromptu assembly of coworkers and neighbors serenaded me with happy birthday, imbued with the enthusiasm of individuals attending a compulsory corporate seminar. I managed to smile, closed my eyes, and made a wish, likely something utterly pathetic, such as, "May this evening conclude swiftly," before extinguishing the candles to polite applause. The ensuing silence was deafening. Not the comfortable quietude of shared enjoyment, but the thick, awkward stillness of people witnessing something profoundly melancholic, unsure whether to acknowledge it or simply pretend all was well. It was then that my phone finally buzzed. Do you wish to know the precise instant I should have foreseen this impending disaster? It was precisely 2 weeks after I dispatched those birthday invitations. I was seated in my mother's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, observing her meticulous attention to a pot roast, as if she were performing intricate cardiac surgery. The entire family was present for one of those obligatory weekly dinners that strangely became a ritual after my father's health scare the previous year. Because evidently, nothing says we care about your well-being quite like forcing everyone to congregate around a table laden with enough carbohydrates to power a small aircraft. I was actually feeling rather content with life. My birthday invitations had been circulating for a full 14 days, and no one had yet rescinded their attendance. Admittedly, no one had formally RSVP'd either, but within my family, a lack of response typically signifies, yes, I'll be there. Unless, of course, someone is actively hemorrhaging or undergoing a divorce. I was leaning back in one of my mother's character-filled creaky kitchen chairs, the ones she adamantly refuses to replace because they possess a certain charm, which in maternal parlance translates to, I'm too obstinate to admit these are older than disco. It was at this juncture that Ryan sauntered in, sporting that smug, self-satisfied grin he's been honing since middle school. You know the one, a blend of half smugness and half announcement that he's about to disrupt your day and relish every moment of it. He was carrying a 12-pack of Corona, as if bestowing frankincense upon the manger. My mother's face immediately lit up, as if he had declared his candidacy for the papacy. Ryan, honey, you're just in time. I was just telling your father about Mrs. Henderson's new fence situation. But Ryan, bless his oblivious soul, was not privy to my mother's riveting saga of property lines and homeowner association disputes. No, sir. Ryan had more pressing matters at hand. He popped open a beer. Apparently, 5 o'clock commences at noon on Sundays in Ryan's universe, and cleared his throat as if preparing to deliver the Gettysburg Address. Actually, Mom, I've got some news, he announced, taking a theatrical swig of his beer. I'm throwing a party. Now, in any typical family, this announcement might have been met with mild curiosity and perhaps a request for further details. But this is the very same family that once bestowed a standing ovation upon Ryan for successfully executing a parallel parking maneuver. Consequently, my mother practically levitated with excitement. A party? How wonderful! What's the occasion? And then it arrived, ladies and gentlemen, the moment my meticulously planned birthday dinner was utterly annihilated. Just a grand barbecue party, Ryan proclaimed, his grin stretching wider than the Grand Canyon. Next Saturday, the 18th, figured it was time to show everyone how it's really done. The 18th, the precise same date as my birthday dinner. The date that had been conspicuously marked on the family calendar since the very moment I issued those invitations. The date that everyone, and I mean everyone, knew was designated for my birthday. I felt my stomach plummet to a point somewhere around my ankles. Ryan, I managed to say, attempting to maintain a semblance of composure. That's my birthday. We're having dinner at Marcellos's, remember? Ryan regarded me with an expression of innocent bewilderment that Oscar-winning actors would covet. Oh, that's right. Well, it's just a barbecue, man. Lighten up. Lighten up. As if I were some tightly wound corporate drone fixated on a trivial scheduling conflict, rather than his older brother, who had just witnessed his birthday being unceremoniously bulldozed by a sibling who once called me in tears because he couldn't operate his coffee maker. But everyone's already committed, I began. Committed, Ryan scoffed, his chuckle morphing into something sharper, devoid of its usual good-natured warmth. Come on, bro, it's not like you're getting married again. It's just dinner. Just dinner, right? Just the dinner I had spent weeks meticulously planning. just the one night a year when I had dared to hope for the spotlight, for reasons other than rectifying someone else's predicaments or mediating their interpersonal dramas. But here's where the narrative truly intensifies. Instead of retreating or even suggesting an alternative date, Ryan doubled down, as if playing poker with someone else's resources. Besides, he continued, gaining momentum, I've already put deposits down on everything. The pavilion at Riverside Park, the catering truck, the whole 9 yards. This is going to be epic, because apparently my younger brother had unilaterally decided to transform my birthday into some kind of competitive event and was determined to win by ostentatiously spending money like a lottery winner on a spree. My mother, bless her duplicitous little heart, was practically vibrating with excitement. Ryan, that sounds absolutely wonderful. How thoughtful of you to plan something so elaborate. Thoughtful. Let me reiterate that for emphasis. Thoughtful. Orchestrating a massive party on your brother's birthday and deeming it thoughtful is akin to setting someone's car ablaze and then presenting it as a surprise car wash. I don't know, son, my father chimed in from his recliner, where he had been feigning interest in a golf match while no doubt absorbing every syllable. Your brother already has something planned. For a fleeting, glorious moment, I harbored the delusion that my father would champion my cause. Perhaps he would point out that hijacking someone's birthday is generally considered a rather unsportsmanlike maneuver in most civilized societies. But then Ryan deployed his ultimate weapon. Dad, think about it. When was the last time we had a real family gathering? Something where everyone could just relax, have a few beers, maybe throw a football around. Remember how much fun we used to have at those summer cookouts when we were kids? And just like that, my father capitulated, melting like putty in Ryan's hands. Ryan had successfully triggered the magical remember when response that transforms mature men into nostalgic, sentimental figures. My father's face softened, his eyes misting over as if he were watching a particularly heartwarming commercial featuring golden retrievers. Well, my father murmured thoughtfully, it would be nice to have everyone together. Everyone together at Ryan's party on my birthday while I sat in solitary confinement at Marcelos's, painstakingly explaining to the waiter why I needed to reduce my reservation for 8 down to just 2. Great, Ryan exclaimed, clapping his hands together as if he had just single-handedly solved global hunger. I'll start making calls. This is going to be the party of the year. My mother was already retrieving her phone, likely intending to disseminate the news to every relative within a 50-mile radius. Should I call Aunt Martha? Oh, and what about the Petersons? They adore a good barbecue. And in that instant, it struck me with irrefutable clarity. This wasn't mere thoughtlessness on Ryan's part, nor an accidental disruption of my plans. This was a calculated maneuver. He had deliberately waited precisely 2 weeks after my invitations were circulated, long enough for everyone to be aware of my dinner, but not so long that they felt irrevocably committed. He had strategically positioned his party as the more exhilarating alternative to my understated dinner. He had even selected a venue capable of accommodating not only the entire extended family, but also a significant portion of the neighborhood. I was witnessing a masterclass in birthday assassination, and my own family was enthusiastically applauding from the sidelines. Julia, who had been uncharacteristically subdued throughout this entire exchange, finally broke her silence. Well, we'll still come to your dinner, she said to me. But even as the words escaped her lips, I could discern the gears turning behind her eyes. She was already calculating the social ramifications of foregoing Ryan's epic barbecue to attend a subdued dinner with my colleagues. "Of course we will," she added, though her tone suggested an agreement to attend a mandatory workplace sensitivity seminar. And so this is precisely how the evening unfolded, the night that was meant to be unequivocally mine. Envision this: myself seated at Marcellos's, attired in that navy button-down shirt purported to make my eyes stand out, enveloped by the soft luminescence of candlelight I had specifically requested, envisioning it as a conducive element for superior photographic captures. You know, the kind of images that portray a man celebrating with the individuals who hold the utmost significance in his life. Instead, I found myself bathed in lighting that cast an aura resembling attendance at one's own posthumous reception. The restaurant itself was impeccable, I'll grant them that. Marcello had truly outdone himself with the ambiance. Soft jazz murmured at a volume just sufficient to bridge conversational lulls. The aroma of garlic and basil wafted through the air like a comforting, aromatic embrace, and our table, strategically positioned by the window, offered a vantage point from which to observe the world as it passed by, while we, ostensibly, commemorated another year of my existence. Alas, the only individuals actively observing the external panorama were my colleagues and the Hendersons from next door, whose gazes repeatedly drifted to their phones as if anticipating the arrival of a more appealing invitation. Jim from accounting was valiantly striving to maintain a cheerful disposition, regaling us with his weekend golf exploits, a narrative that elicited no particular request but was endured with polite patience. So there I was, standing over this impossible putt, and I'm thinking to myself, Jim, this is it. This is your moment of glory. And so he continued, while I surreptitiously checked my phone for the 100th time, clinging to a desperate hope that perhaps Julia might have dispatched some form of explanation for my family's collective decision to virtually vanish on my birthday. Sarah from Human Resources had contributed that rather dubious gas station wine I previously mentioned, and bless her efforts, she was attempting to imbue it with a celebratory spirit. "This is actually quite nice," she declared, uttering a clear fabrication as she took another sip of what was undeniably the liquid embodiment of regret. "Very bold." The Hendersons engaged in that peculiar form of nonverbal communication often observed between long married couples, conveying entirely through significant glances and subtle head movements. I observed Mrs. Henderson offer her husband the universally understood eyebrow query, "Should we inquire about the family?" And Mr. Henderson respond with the equally universal head shake conveying, "Absolutely not." They had resided next door to us for sufficient time to recognize that familial discord was akin to quicksand. The more one struggled, the deeper one inevitably sank. By 8 o'clock, I had relinquished all pretense of expecting any further arrivals. The vacant seats encircling our table were not a stylish declaration of fashionably late. They were simply starkly empty. Each unoccupied chair felt like a personal repudiation, a tangible manifestation of my perceived significance to those who ought to have prioritized me above all others. Julia's chair remained, a silent, mocking testament to its perfectly arranged place setting. Sophie's customary spot by the window, where she habitually positioned herself to people watch and feign disinterest in adult discourse, lay untouched. Even my mother's chair, which I had deliberately placed at what I envisioned as the head of the table, stood as a solemn monument to my own pathetic, unyielding optimism. The waiter, Giovanni, according to his name tag, had been casting sympathetic glances my way throughout the entire evening. He appeared to be in his early 20s, possessing that earnest enthusiasm that either stems from a nascent career in the service industry or an inherent professional Italian charm. Each time he traversed our table, I could see him mentally calculating, tallying the empty chairs against the reservation he had likely scribbled as birthday party, table of 8. Perhaps the others will arrive shortly, he ventured hopefully around 7:30, refilling my water glass for the 4th time. Yeah, I conceded, any minute now. But minutes elongated into an hour, and hope gradually transmuted into that familiar gnawing sensation of disappointment, settling uncomfortably behind my sternum like a persistent case of heartburn. Except this particular burn was beyond the efficacy of antacids. The conversation at our makeshift gathering had devolved into that strained quality that arises when everyone is expending considerable effort to maintain an illusion of normalcy, while the unspoken elephant in the room steadily enlarges and commences an impromptu dance. We exhausted Jim's golf narratives, Sarah's latest binge-watching recommendations, and the Hendersons' detailed critique of their neighbors' newly implemented landscaping choices. We had officially reached the nadir of our conversational resources. It was at this juncture that Giovanni approached, bearing the cake. Now, allow me to elaborate on this particular confection. This was no ordinary dessert. This was a chocolate masterpiece from Delacroix Bakery, a creation whose cost exceeded that of many individuals' monthly car payments. 3 decadent layers of dark chocolate heaven, interlaced with salted caramel filling, and a ganache coating so abundant it could induce tears of pure joy in even the most stoic of men. I had commissioned it 2 weeks prior, back when I still harbored a fervent belief in concepts such as familial loyalty and the inherent magic of birthdays. The baker had even meticulously inscribed "Happy Birthday" in an elegant script across the top, presumably assuming it would be flanked by smiling faces and heartfelt well wishes. Instead, it was ensconced by my accountant, my human resources representative, and 2 neighbors who were palpably contemplating the propriety of discreetly consulting their timepieces. But herein lies the peculiar truth of reaching rock bottom. At times, it bestows a peculiar form of clarity. As Giovanni gently placed that exquisite cake before me, complete with those sparkler candles that had filled me with such eager anticipation, something within my chest underwent a subtle yet profound shift. It wasn't the crushing weight of disappointment I had been shouldering all evening, but rather a lighter sensation, almost one of liberation. The sparklers ignited with that satisfying hiss and pop, a timeless symphony, casting dancing shadows across the faces of those who had, against all odds, bothered to attend. These individuals, Jim with his regrettable golf stories, Sarah with her questionable gas station wine, the Hendersons with their nuanced nonverbal cues. They were present not out of obligation, not due to familial duty or societal pressure, but because they had consciously chosen to mark the occasion with me. "Make a wish," Sarah encouraged, raising her glass of dubious vintage. And do you know what I did? I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and formulated a wish that surprised even myself. I did not wish for my family to spontaneously materialize with apologies and elaborate explanations. I did not wish for Ryan's barbecue to be thwarted by inclement weather, or for Julia to experience a sudden surge of conscience. I wished for the fortitude to cease caring with such desperate intensity. The singing commenced then, that gloriously awkward rendition of Happy Birthday, which somehow manages to decelerate and become more out of tune with each passing year of one's life. But this time, the melody resonated differently. Perhaps it was because the voices contributing to the chorus genuinely desired to be there. Perhaps it was because of the genuine sincerity radiating from this disparate assembly of individuals who had chosen to attend simply out of affection for me, rather than any obligation stemming from shared ancestry or marital vows. I extinguished the candles to a chorus of heartfelt applause, and for a fleeting 30 seconds, I experienced a sensation that might have been akin to contentment. The confection was every bit as magnificent as had been promised. The company was unexpectedly agreeable, and for a brief interlude, I harbored a thought that perhaps this anniversary wouldn't devolve into a complete fiasco. It was at that precise juncture that my mobile device commenced an agitated vibration against the tabletop, reminiscent of an irate insect. The phone was exhibiting that peculiar behavior where its aggressive oscillation against the surface caused it to skitter across the expanse, like some kind of digital crustacean undergoing an erratic spasm. Every diner at the table was fixated upon it, not out of mere nosiness, but because the insistent, almost frantic buzzing was an undeniable intrusion, piercing our intimate celebratory atmosphere with the abruptness of a saw through fine fabric. I retrieved the device and nearly gagged on my mouthful of $70 chocolate cake. 52 missed calls, 52, all emanating from Julia. Now, to provide some context, over the 15 years of my marriage to this woman, the most calls I had ever missed from her amounted to perhaps 8. And that was during the emergency surgery when Sophie fractured her arm, tumbling from her bicycle. 52 missed calls signifies a communication breakdown of apocalyptic proportions. This is the kind of telephone activity that suggests either the residence is engulfed in flames, a medical emergency has necessitated hospitalization, or the zombie uprising has finally commenced and she requires assistance in formulating our survival strategy. The notifications for unheard messages were piled high like a stack of pancakes at a leisurely Sunday brunch. Each crimson indicator served as a taunting reminder of the escalating crisis unfolding in real time while I had been here, partaking in cake and feigning an illusion of normalcy. "Everything all right?" Sarah inquired, evidently perceiving that the spectrum of colors displayed on my countenance was sufficient to qualify as a dynamic mood ring. "Yes," I equivocated, my gaze fixed upon the luminous screen ablaze with digital alarm. "Just Julia. Just Julia." As if those two simple words could possibly encapsulate the gravity of whatever tempest was brewing at the other end of those 52 unanswered attempts. As if I could casually dismiss the fact that my wife, who was ostensibly attending my birthday repast at this very moment, was apparently experiencing a communication breakdown of some magnitude while present at my brother's competing celebration. The phone vibrated once more. Call 53. I observed the incoming communication, Julia's radiant smile filling the display with a photograph from our anniversary dinner the preceding year. Back when her gaze still conveyed a sense of admiration, as if I were someone worthy of celebration, rather than a mere individual whose anniversary could be supplanted by superior barbecue. Her contact designation was prominently displayed, Julia Reedart, accompanied by that small heart icon I had appended in those nascent stages of our marriage when we still adorned each other's names with such affectionate symbols, rather than merely acknowledging each other's existence with a tacit resignation. All eyes were now upon me. Not overtly, of course. They were all feigning rapt attention to their dessert or the flickering remnants of the candle wax. Yet, I could sense their collective focus, akin to the warmth radiating from a campfire. The burden of anticipation, the unspoken query hanging suspended in the air. Will you answer it? Here's what my rational mind dictated. Any sensible individual would have answered that call, likely stepping outside to address the emergency that warranted 53 attempts at contact. Any devoted spouse would have felt concern, perhaps even apprehension, regarding the nature of a situation so urgent as to necessitate such a communication barrage. But you know what? I was not in a disposition to be particularly reasonable, decent, or husbandly. Instead, I gazed at the vibrating phone, at Julia's smiling visage mockingly adorning the screen, and I did something that astonished everyone at the table, including myself. I smiled. It wasn't a manufactured grin, not one of those constrained, socially palatable expressions one assumes when pretending everything is fine. This was something entirely different. This was the sort of smile that originates from the very core of one's being, the kind that begins as a faint ember of realization and expands across one's features like the dawn breaking over a majestic mountain range. I was smiling because the profound irony had finally dawned on me. The cosmic jest of it all, the exquisite, heartbreaking paradox that constituted my existence. Here I was, seated at my own anniversary feast, surrounded by individuals who had genuinely elected to be present. And my wife, who had elected to be elsewhere entirely, was now desperately endeavoring to ensnare me in whatever unfolding drama was occurring at the festivities she had prioritized over me. The vibration ceased. Julia's image vanished from the display, supplanted by the notification indicating 53 missed calls and a comparable number of voicemails. My phone's battery was likely pleading for respite after its strenuous exertion. "You're not going to respond?" Jim inquired, ever the boundary crosser with his well-intentioned solicitude. "No," I replied, proceeding to carve another segment of cake. This particular portion tasted even more exquisite than the first. Perhaps it was enhanced by a subtle undertone of liberation. It's my anniversary. And that was it. That was the pivotal moment when everything transformed. It occurred right there, nestled between the rich chocolate frosting and the gentle luminescence of the candles, not with a grand pronouncement or a furniture-flinging outburst, but with a simple smile and a sliver of cake. The Hendersons exchanged one of their knowing glances, this one clearly conveying an unmistakable, "That's intriguing." Sarah raised her glass of rather questionable wine in a gesture that could have signified approval or bewilderment. It was difficult to ascertain. Giovanni materialized at my side, proffering a fresh napkin, likely under the impression that I had entirely lost my faculties. However, I had not lost them. For the first time in months, possibly years, I felt that I had rediscovered them. The phone remained silent for precisely 4 minutes and 37 seconds, a duration sufficient for me to conclude my cake and commence a second helping, because, frankly, why not? Then it began its insistent buzzing once more. Call 54. This time, I didn't even glance at the screen. I simply widened my smile and took another bite of cake, savoring the salted caramel filling as my phone vibrated itself into digital exhaustion upon the table. Around me, the conversation gradually regained its flow. My dining companions apparently concluded that ignoring ringing telephones constituted a perfectly acceptable anniversary tradition. Call 55, call 56. Each vibration felt like a minor triumph, proof that whatever pandemonium was unfolding at Ryan's grand barbecue extravaganza, it was not my concern. Not this evening. This evening, I was precisely where I belonged, indulging in exorbitantly priced cake with individuals who had arrived by choice, not by obligation. By the time we reached call 60, even Jim had ceased his anxious glances toward my phone. Sarah was recounting a surprisingly humorous anecdote about her feline companion's ongoing conflict with the postal carrier, and the Hendersons were deliberating the merits of ordering dessert. Evidently, my chocolate cake had inspired them to embrace the sweeter aspects of life. I was chuckling, genuinely amused by Sarah's account of her cat's exploits. When the persistent buzzing finally ceased, my phone's screen went dark, and the ensuing silence felt rich and fulfilling rather than vacant and desolate. This, I realized, was the essence of peace. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of any compulsion to respond to every beckoning for my attention. It was then that a realization, one that should have been apparent from the outset, struck me. I was not the neglected one this evening. I was not the individual sitting in isolation, consumed by longing and abandonment. I was the one who had deliberately disengaged. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was smiling by my own volition. You know what's truly remarkable about contemporary technology? It affords you the capacity to experience betrayal in high definition, complete with crystal clear audio and precise timestamps that delineate the exact moment your life took a downturn. I encountered this particular form of revelation the following morning, seated in my kitchen with a cup of coffee that possessed the flavor of unvarnished truth, meticulously perusing Julia's voicemails as if I were some sort of masochistic archaeologist excavating the ruins of my marital union. The initial few recordings contained precisely what one would anticipate from a spouse who had absented herself from her husband's anniversary dinner. Standard damage control pronouncements delivered with that disingenuous, cheerful tone that women master around the same time they perfect the art of walking in heels without stumbling. Hey, honey, sorry I missed your call earlier. Ryan's party is going great. Everyone's asking about you. Call me back when you get this. Okay. Love you. Love you. Indeed, Julia. Nothing quite says I love you like forsaking one's spouse's anniversary celebration for superior brisket and potato salad. However, that was merely the prelude. The true spectacle of domestic dysfunction was yet to unfold. Message number 4 marked the commencement of the more intriguing developments. The veneer of forced cheerfulness had begun to fracture at the edges, much like inexpensive paint succumbing to the relentless heat of a Florida summer. Okay, so listen, we have a tiny situation here. The catering truck broke down about an hour ago, and apparently they can't get another one until tomorrow. People are starting to get hungry, and Ryan's kind of freaking out. Can you maybe call that guy you know who runs the food truck downtown? The one with the tacos? Just call me back. Okay. The one with the tacos. She was referring to Miguel, proprietor of Wheels of Steel Taco Company, and incidentally, one of my clients, a gentleman I had assisted in securing a modest business administration loan the previous year when his original vehicle had been rendered inoperable by an inebriated driver. A man who placed his trust in me, who relied on my support, and who undoubtedly would have moved mountains to render aid had I solicited it. But it wasn't I who was making the request, was it? Message 7 was where Julia's desperation truly began to manifest. The forced joviality had been entirely discarded in favor of what I term crisis management mode. That peculiar amalgam of panic and entitlement that emerges when an individual realizes their poorly conceived event is poised to become a social catastrophe. Listen, I know you're probably still at dinner, but this is getting bad, really bad. Ryan spent all his money on the venue and the decorations, and now we have about 60 people here with no food. Your mom is asking where you are, and I don't know what to tell her. Can you please just call Miguel and see if he can come out here? I'll explain everything later. I promise. I'll explain everything later. That, my friends, is relationship parlance for I intend to manipulate you into believing this predicament is somehow your fault, but for the moment, I require your assistance in resolving my predicament. The remarkable aspect of listening to an individual's descent into panic in real time is the ability to discern the precise moment their true priorities come to light. For Julia, that moment arrived around message 12, when a polite entreaty devolved into something more akin to a command. Okay, I've been calling you for 2 hours now, and this is getting ridiculous. I get that you're upset about tonight, but Ryan really needs your help. Everyone is looking at me like I should be able to fix this. And I told them you would know what to do. You always know what to do, so please just pick up the goddamn phone and call Miguel. You always know what to do. The interpretation of this statement: you are exceptionally useful when we require something to be rectified, tidied, or paid for. At all other times, you are essentially decorative furniture that occasionally requires sustenance. But wait, it gets even more illuminating. Message 18 was where Julia completely abandoned any pretense of this being a family emergency and revealed the true impetus behind her actions: social mortification. Her voice adopted that peculiar cadence one hears when an individual realizes they are about to become the subject of local gossip and not the favorable kind. The Hendersons just left. The Hendersons, they said they had to get home, but I saw them talking to the Johnsons before they went. And now the Johnsons are looking at their phones and making excuses too. People are starting to leave. And Ryan is just standing there like a deer in headlights. Mom keeps asking why you're not here to help. And I don't know what to say anymore. Please, please just call me back. Ah, there it is. The unvarnished truth, finally. This was not about an emergency or a family crisis. This was about Julia's dawning realization that she had aligned herself with the wrong individual, and now she was witnessing her social standing rapidly deteriorate. She had opted for Ryan's gathering over my anniversary, and now Ryan's gathering was disintegrating with the resilience of a flimsy umbrella caught in a tempest. The desperation escalated considerably around message 25, as Julia's voice acquired that strained timbre characteristic of someone attempting to suppress tears while simultaneously resisting an urge to erupt in anger. I don't understand why you're not answering. This isn't like you. You always answer when I call, always. Something must be wrong with your phone, right? Because you wouldn't just ignore me, not when we need you like this. Ryan's talking about canceling the whole thing. And if he does, everyone's going to know this was a disaster. Everyone's going to know we couldn't even throw a simple barbecue without everything falling apart. We couldn't throw a simple barbecue because evidently, even though I was excluded from the planning committee, I was still somehow accountable for its execution. Even though they had collectively determined that my anniversary was not worthy of their attendance, I was still expected to be on standby for damage control. By message 30, Julia had transcended mere desperation and plunged headlong into that volatile territory where panic converges with rage to produce something truly remarkable. You know what? Fine, don't answer. But when your daughter asks why her father couldn't be bothered to help save her uncle's party, I'll tell her the truth. I'll tell her that you were too petty and childish to put aside your hurt feelings for one night. I'll tell her that when your family needed you, you decided to punish everyone by disappearing. My daughter. She was now involving Sophie, weaponizing my paternal bond with my child to coerce me into rectifying their disarray, because nothing embodies family values quite like employing one's teenager as a tool for emotional blackmail. However, the true masterpiece arrived with message 47, wherein Julia's voice cracked just sufficiently to indicate that she was either weeping or delivering a remarkably convincing imitation. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to fix this. Everyone keeps looking at me like I should have answers, like I should know where you are and why you're not helping. Your brother is about to have a complete meltdown. Your parents are asking if something happened to you. And I'm standing here feeling like the worst wife in the world because I can't even get my own husband to answer his phone. The worst wife in the world. Finally, a point of agreement. After enduring Julia's 47-message symphony of desperation, I did what any rational individual would have done. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, settled into my preferred armchair. The one Julia invariably complains detracts from the living room's aesthetic coherence, yet possesses a comfort level sufficient for one to depart this mortal coil, and contemplated with intense scrutiny the recurring pattern that had been unfolding quite literally beneath my very nose for years. You see, the curious aspect of being the dependable individual within a family dynamic is that one becomes invisible in the most profoundly spectacular manner. You are simultaneously the most critical person in the room and the least interesting. You are the individual whom everyone contacts when the situation escalates, yet no one considers inviting when planning a convivial event. You are, in essence, a human Swiss Army knife, exceedingly useful, utterly taken for granted, and relegated to a junk drawer until your services are required. Ryan, conversely, has been the favored child since he mastered the art of locomotion. And I mean that quite literally from the moment he began walking. The youngster took his inaugural steps at 9 months of age, and you would have presumed he had just discovered a cure for cancer, given the effusive reactions of mom and dad. I, meanwhile, had been walking for 2 years at that juncture, but apparently that was no longer considered newsworthy. The firstborn child breaks new ground. Subsequent children simply tread the path already established. That pattern has persisted ever since. When Ryan graduated from high school by the narrowest of margins, and I mean by the skin of his teeth, the lad was compelled to attend summer school simply to attain his diploma. Mom orchestrated a celebration that would have impressed a lottery winner. When I graduated as valedictorian 3 years prior, we frequented Applebee's, because apparently academic distinction merits the same level of fanfare as a Tuesday night dinner special. University followed a similar trajectory. Ryan abandoned his studies after 2 semesters, asserting a need to discover himself, a pursuit that apparently necessitated a 6-month backpacking excursion across Europe, generously financed by Dad. Upon his return, possessing nothing more than a dubious tattoo and an even more questionable accent, everyone acted as though he had returned from some noble vision quest, rather than what it truly was, an extravagantly expensive quarter-life crisis fueled by parental indulgence. Meanwhile, I diligently navigated 4 years of business school, concurrently holding down 2 part-time jobs to afford textbooks and instant noodles, consistently achieving Dean's List recognition each semester, while Ryan was engaged in self-discovery within Amsterdam's coffee houses. Did anyone host a celebration for me upon my graduation, magna cum laude? Take a wild guess. Mom prepared a pleasant dinner. Dad offered a firm handshake, and Ryan was too profoundly hungover from his own welcome home festivities to even attend. The business failures, however, were the truly noteworthy occurrences. Ryan has initiated precisely 3 enterprises in his adult life, and all 3 have spectacularly imploded, akin to the Hindenburg experiencing a particularly dreadful day. The initial venture was the food truck enterprise. Yes, the irony of Julia imploring me to contact Miguel was not lost on me, and it endured a mere 6 months before Ryan discovered that operating a business entails responsibilities such as rising early, meticulously tracking finances, and consistently demonstrating punctuality. When that endeavor faltered, whom do you believe Dad contacted to assist in rectifying the financial fallout? If you surmise the son, who possesses an actual aptitude for balancing a checkbook, you would be correct. I dedicated 3 weekends to navigating Ryan's chaotic filing system, endeavoring to reconcile vendor payments and tax obligations while Ryan nursed his wounded ego at various happy hours across town. The second business was even more remarkable. A landscaping company that Ryan established with his high school acquaintance, Jake. These 2 geniuses managed to obliterate more turf than they cultivated, arrived at job sites with equipment that was barely functional, and somehow convinced themselves they could operate a business predicated entirely on positive affirmations and sporadic effort. Spoiler alert, the market was conspicuously indifferent to their emotional state. When that venture inevitably collapsed, guess who received the panic summons regarding small claims court and irate clientele? Guess who incurred personal expenses for legal representation to prevent Ryan from facing utter financial ruin? Guess who never received reimbursement for that legal counsel despite repeated assurances that the funds were imminently forthcoming? And the third business, good heavens, the third business was a testament to sheer delusion. Ryan determined he would become a social media influencer, not due to any discernible skill or talent, mind you, but because he had observed some 22-year-old amassing considerable wealth by posting videos of themselves consuming cereal. Ryan expended $2,000 of Mom and Dad's money on photographic equipment and ring lights, established what he termed his content studio in their basement, and proceeded to produce precisely 17 videos that collectively garnered approximately the same level of attention as a mime performing at a death metal concert. But here's what truly incenses me. Throughout all of this, through every failed venture and harebrained scheme, Mom and Dad never wavered in their belief in Ryan's potential. Every setback was merely a learning opportunity. Every catastrophe was irrefutable evidence that he was acquiring invaluable life skills. Meanwhile, I was diligently building a prosperous financial planning practice, acquiring my first residence, marrying, raising a child, the mundane adult pursuits that do not come with participation trophies. And Julia, well, don't even get me started on Julia. When we initially began seeing each other, she seemed genuinely impressed by my consistent demeanor, my drive, and my capacity to plan beyond a mere 5 minutes into the future. She used to tease that I was the responsible adult in her life, the one who could manage the less exciting but essential responsibilities while she explored her career path. However, somewhere along the line, stability transformed into tedium, and a sense of responsibility morphed into predictability. Ryan's inherent unpredictability started to appear as adventurous. His impulsive nature became charming rather than a sign of irresponsibility. His complete inability to plan ahead shifted from a personal failing to a refreshing outlook on life. I witnessed this evolution firsthand over the years. During family get-togethers, Julio's face would light up the moment Ryan entered, erupting in laughter at his tales of whatever absurd predicaments he'd recently found himself in. She would hang on his every word, captivated by his latest get-rich-quick scheme, while I remained seated like a piece of inanimate furniture, occasionally offering practical advice that no one seemed interested in hearing. Sophie, too, fell under his charm, which was entirely predictable. Uncle Ryan was the fun one, the one who arrived with gifts that were perhaps a bit too extravagant and imparted lessons I had specifically requested he avoid. Uncle Ryan did not lecture her about schoolwork, personal obligations, or thinking about her future. Uncle Ryan simply wanted everyone to have a good time, and what 16-year-old wouldn't be drawn to that kind of energy? So there I was, perched uncomfortably in my mismatched chair, slowly savoring bourbon that cost more than Ryan's last business venture was worth. For the first time, the complete picture became painfully clear. I wasn't merely the overlooked son, the underappreciated husband, or the unexciting father. I was the very bedrock upon which their lives were built, the solid ground they took for granted while they pursued more thrilling endeavors. And they had just demonstrated on my birthday precisely how little that foundation meant to them when push came to shove. You know the saying about revenge being a dish best served cold? Well, it's absolutely true. But what they fail to mention is that the most effective revenge begins with meticulous documentation. And believe me, I had plenty of documentation. After spending 3 hours in that chair, fortifying myself with bourbon and a newfound clarity in equal measure, I did precisely what any self-respecting financial planner would do. I became organized. My first course of action was my phone. Those 52 unanswered calls weren't merely indicators of Julia's distress. They served as timestamps of betrayal, a digital paper trail revealing exactly when my family's priorities shifted so decisively. But the true prize lay within those voicemails. 47 distinct audio files captured Julia's voice, her tone growing progressively more anxious. Each one was a perfect, compact illustration of how quickly familial loyalty can devolve into a demand for personal assistance when circumstances become dire. I settled at my kitchen table, my laptop open, replaying each message and taking notes as if preparing for the most somber deposition imaginable. Message 12. Julia admits she told everyone I would have a solution for their catering mishap. Message 18. She reveals that guests are departing Ryan's party, turning it into a social embarrassment. Message 25. The initial instance where she attempts to manipulate me by involving Sophie. However, the remarkable aspect of individuals in a state of crisis is their candor. When Julia was in a panic about their botched event, she wasn't concerned with how her words might be perceived later. She was simply expressing her genuine opinion of me, the dependable problem solver who was expected to drop everything to extricate them from their difficulties. Even after they had collectively deemed my birthday unimportant enough to attend, I meticulously saved every single voicemail to my computer, created a cloud backup, and established a desktop folder labeled "For Later." Because if there is one principle that 2 decades in financial planning has instilled in me, it is that documentation is paramount. People can easily distort or deny what they said, their intentions, or their motivations. But digital records possess no such capacity for selective memory. Next, I delved into the social media abyss, because if you truly wish to comprehend how people feel about you, observe their online activity when they believe you are not watching. Facebook proved to be a veritable goldmine of hypocrisy. Julia's profile was inundated with photographs from Ryan's extravagant barbecue. All were posted in real time, while I was seated alone at Marcello's. The timestamps were eerily precise. 7:23 p.m. Julia posts a selfie with Ryan, both beaming inanely, accompanied by the caption, "Family fun time." This was right around the time she should have been seated across from me at dinner. 7:45 p.m. A group photo of everyone at the party, including my mother, father, and Sophie, all appearing to be thoroughly enjoying themselves, uploaded precisely when Giovanni should have been serenading me with a rendition of Happy Birthday alongside my makeshift family of colleagues. But the most damning post arrived at 8:30 p.m. An image of the vacant catering tables with a caption, "When your food truck breaks down, but family comes first. Redart Jabrjar BBQ fail Chinark family time." This was posted merely minutes before she initiated that frantic series of calls attempting to enlist my help in their predicament. Family comes first. I saved that particular post approximately 6 times. The irony was so palpable, it was almost tangible. Sophie's Instagram feed was even more revealing, as teenagers possess virtually no filter and even less foresight regarding consequences. Her story from that evening presented a chronological account of my family's betrayal, conveyed with the casual, thoughtless tone characteristic of a 16-year-old. First post, "Uncle Ryan's party is going to be lit," accompanied by a photograph of the party setup. Uploaded at 6:15 p.m., 45 minutes before my birthday dinner was scheduled to commence. Second post, "Why is the food truck broken though?" At 7:52 p.m., featuring a picture of the forlorn, empty serving stations. Third post, "Mom's freaking out about dad LOL." At 8:35 p.m., no image, just text. However, the timing perfectly coincided with Julia's voicemail crisis. The brilliance of Instagram stories is their ephemeral nature, disappearing after 24 hours unless intentionally saved. Thus, I saved them. Every single one screenshot and meticulously filed away into my expanding collection of digital evidence. However, the ultimate prize of my documentation emerged from an unexpected quarter: my mother's Facebook page. You see, while my mother may struggle with technology to the extent of habitually posting photos of her thumb, she also serves as the family's unofficial historian. Every gathering, every celebration, every moment she deems worthy of preservation is documented with captions so detailed they would impress a museum curator. And there it was, posted at 9:15 p.m. on the night of my birthday. A lengthy, rambling post extolling the virtues of Ryan's magnificent barbecue party, which included this particularly damning paragraph. "So proud of my Ryan for organizing such a lovely gathering. Even though we had some food troubles, truck broke down, everyone pulled together to make it special. Sometimes the best memories come from the unexpected moments. Wish our other son could have been here to help out, but I'm sure he had his reasons. Family is everything. Wish our other son could have been here to help out, not wish he could have been here to celebrate with us, or hope he's having a nice birthday. No, her wish was for me to be present to assist, to fix their problems, to be of service. And the kicker, I'm sure he had his reasons. As if choosing to attend my own birthday dinner was some form of petty defiance rather than, the ordinary activity one engages in on their birthday. I captured a screenshot of that post as well, alongside all 37 comments from relatives and family friends expressing their sympathy for Ryan's challenging evening and praising his resilient spirit in the face of adversity. Not a single comment inquired about my whereabouts or offered birthday wishes. Not one member of my extended family even acknowledged that it was my birthday. But wait, it gets better. Because my father, bless his oblivious soul, had left his own comment on my mother's post. Ryan handled it like a champ, proud of both my boys, even if one couldn't make it tonight. Maybe next time he'll prioritize family over whatever else he had going on. Maybe next time he'll prioritize family. I was prioritizing family, my actual birthday, the one they had all known about for months. But apparently, my birthday wasn't considered sufficiently family compared to Ryan's impromptu barbecue catastrophe. I saved that one too, right alongside the voicemails, the Instagram stories, and the Facebook photos. Every piece of evidence was meticulously filed, time-stamped, and cross-referenced, as if I were constructing a legal case. Because perhaps, in a way, I was. The final component of my documentation arrived from an unexpected source: my credit card statements. You see, I had indeed paid for that birthday dinner at Marcello's, naturally, but I had also covered the expenses for my colleagues and the Hendersons. 47 individuals had been invited to celebrate with me that evening, yet only 5 had materialized, and I had ended up footing the bill for everyone's meal, because that's simply what one does when they are the responsible party. $347 for a birthday dinner that my own family couldn't be bothered to attend. I printed out that receipt and added it to my folder, not with any expectation of reimbursement, but as tangible proof of precisely how much my birthday had been worth to them. I leaned back and surveyed my laptop screen, focusing on the folder labeled "For Later," which now contained months of screenshots, hours of audio recordings, printed receipts, and social media posts that collectively painted an unvarnished portrait of my family's true feelings towards me. I wasn't entirely certain how I would leverage this evidence yet, but one thing was unequivocally clear. When the moment arrived, I would be prepared. Here's the reality of cohabiting with individuals who have fundamentally dismissed your significance. They grow remarkably accustomed to their disrespect. It's as though they've collectively concluded that you are too amiable, too steady, too reliably decent to ever confront them. Consequently, they continue to heap their demands upon you until you resemble nothing more than a human doormat burdened with a mortgage and a retirement fund. The weeks following my birthday were a masterclass in gaslighting, expertly disguised as ordinary family life. Julia seamlessly reintegrated into our established routine as if nothing had transpired, brewing coffee each morning and inquiring about my day as though she hadn't spent my birthday frantically attempting to enlist me in rectifying someone else's mess. She would bestow a peck on my cheek as she departed for work, text me about picking up groceries on her way home, and curl up beside me in bed at night as though we were still the same couple we had been before she opted for barbecue over birthday cake. What was truly remarkable was her ability to completely sidestep any acknowledgement of the event. Not once did she offer an apology for missing my dinner. Not once did she provide an explanation as to why Ryan's last-minute gathering had suddenly eclipsed the celebration we had been planning for weeks. She simply acted as though it had never occurred, as if my birthday were a minor scheduling inconvenience that we would all move past, rather than a profound betrayal that had clearly delineated my position in her hierarchy of priorities. Sophie demonstrated an even more impressive capacity for feigning normalcy. She would bound into the kitchen each morning, grab her customary breakfast of whatever sugary cereal was currently in vogue, and engage in chatter about school dramas or social gossip, completely unfazed by the fact that she had spent my birthday posting Instagram stories detailing the enjoyment of Uncle Ryan's party. The girl could look me directly in the eye and request a ride to the mall. Apparently, she perceived no irony in seeking favors from the father she had abandoned for more appealing entertainment. However, the true virtuosos of this charade were my parents. My mother called me 3 days after my birthday, not to offer an apology, mind you, but to regale me with accounts of Ryan's spectacular party and express her regret over the catering debacle. She spent 20 minutes detailing every aspect of Ryan's barbecue catastrophe as if she were providing a play-by-play commentary of a Super Bowl game, apparently oblivious to the fact that she was describing the very event they had chosen over their own son's birthday celebration. "Your brother handled it so well," she gushed, her voice imbued with that maternal pride that I hadn't heard directed towards me since, well, I couldn't recall when. Even when everything went wrong, he kept everyone's spirits up. You would have been proud of him. You would have been proud of him, not, "We missed you," or "We're sorry we couldn't make your dinner." No, she desired for me to feel pride in Ryan's composed management of the disaster that had overshadowed the party they had all selected over me. My father was even more direct in his revisionist narrative when I encountered him the following weekend, as it seemed I was still expected to participate in family obligations despite being persona non grata when it came to actual celebrations. He clapped me on the shoulder and declared, "Sorry we missed your dinner, son, but you understand how it is when family needs you. Family needs you." As if Ryan's poorly conceived barbecue held a greater claim to family than his elder brother's birthday. As if attending my celebration would have been a pleasant but optional gesture, while rescuing Ryan from his own incompetence was a sacred duty superseding all other commitments. The remarkable aspect was the seamless coordination of this narrative, seemingly without any prior discussion. Ryan was portrayed as the victim of unfortunate circumstances who had navigated adversity with grace. They were the devoted family members who had rallied around him in his time of need. And I was, what? The understanding brother who had naturally stepped aside to allow them to focus on the genuine crisis. However, here is what they failed to anticipate. I was finished with being understanding. I began subtly, because the most satisfying revenge is always the understated kind. When Julia requested that I pick up dry cleaning, I simply forgot. When Sophie needed a ride to her friend's house, I was suddenly inundated with work. When my mother called, asking if I could assist my father with his computer, I developed a peculiar inability to find time in my schedule. "You've been so distant lately," Julia remarked one evening, perched on the edge of our bed while I immersed myself in a book far more captivating than any conversation she might have wished to initiate. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I replied without looking up from my pages. "Just busy with work." Work became my universal explanation for everything. Work was the reason I couldn't attend Ryan's subsequent gathering. Work was the reason I missed my father's birthday dinner. Oh, the irony was exquisitely delicious. Work was the justification for my sudden unavailability for all those minor favors and quick fixes that had somehow evolved into my full-time, unpaid profession. The truth is, work was occupying my time, but not in the manner they assumed. I'd begun to take on more significant clients, tackle more intricate cases, and cultivate relationships with individuals who genuinely valued my contributions. My practice was expanding, my income was steadily increasing, and for the first time in years, I was receiving recognition from people who truly mattered. I secured the Morrison account in June. A tech executive seeking to comprehensively overhaul his financial portfolio following a highly successful initial public offering. This was the caliber of high-stakes, high-reward client that most financial planners only dream of. It was the sort of transaction demanding late nights, weekend meetings, and the meticulous attention to detail that had always been my forte, despite rendering me seemingly tedious at social functions. When I informed Julia about the Morrison deal, explaining how it would substantially boost our household income and position us for an early retirement, she offered a perfunctory nod and remarked, "That's nice, honey. Hey, Ryan's thinking about starting another business. Maybe you could help him with the financial planning." I had just secured the most lucrative client of my career, potentially transforming our entire financial trajectory, and her response was to suggest I donate my expertise to her brother-in-law's next inevitable venture. It was at that moment I grasped a truth that should have been evident years prior. They didn't perceive me as successful. They saw me as a convenient resource. My accomplishments were not milestones to be celebrated, but rather assets to be leveraged for the benefit of those they deemed more important. The Morrison account led to the Pritchard account, which subsequently led to the entire Westfield development portfolio. By August, I was managing assets exceeding my wildest financial projections. I was collaborating with individuals who treated me with the respect due to the expert I had always been, yet had never been acknowledged as. My calendar was densely populated with meetings, consultations, and strategy sessions with clients who hung on my every word, understanding that my counsel could determine the success or failure of their financial futures, and my family, they scarcely noticed. Julia lamented my excessive working hours. Sophie would roll her eyes when I was unable to drive her somewhere due to a client call. My mother inquired when I planned to take a respite from all that business matters to spend some meaningful time with the family. Meaningful time with the family. The same family that had collectively decided my birthday was not worth their attendance. The same individuals who viewed my success as an inconvenience that prevented me from being readily available for their convenience. It was at this juncture that I began formulating Ryan's next lesson in accountability. There is a certain, almost poetic justice in observing someone meticulously construct their own downfall with the aid of a party planning shovel. The announcement for Ryan's Family Barbecue 2.0 arrived in early July, delivered with all the fanfare of someone who had learned absolutely nothing from his previous mishap. This time, he was aiming for grandeur, and I mean Vegas wedding chapel, Elvis impersonator grand. The family group chat erupted like Times Square on New Year's Eve when Ryan unveiled his ambitious vision. Lake Harmony Lodge, one of those rustic chic venues where the daily rental fee surpasses the monthly mortgage payments for most individuals. Professional catering, a live band, activities for the children, and enough alcohol to provision a small yacht. The biggest family party of the year, he proclaimed, punctuating his message with enough exclamation points to power a modest metropolis. "This is going to be amazing," Julia texted back, as if caps lock were the appropriate response to financial irresponsibility masquerading as familial bonding. "Can't wait," Sophie chimed in, likely already strategizing her Instagram story content. "So proud of my boy for bringing the family together," my mother added. Because, according to the Johnson Family Handbook, witnessing your adult son squander funds he doesn't possess on a party he cannot afford is apparently a source of maternal pride. I sat in my office observing this digital echo chamber of enthusiasm on my phone screen, experiencing a complex blend of amusement, anticipation, and the cold satisfaction that accompanies watching your adversaries meticulously arrange their own downfall, awaiting your decisive nudge. Because here's what they remained unaware of. I had been diligently occupied, extremely occupied. While they were all engaged in the pretense that my birthday betrayal had never occurred, I had been cultivating something remarkable, a network of contacts, clients, and professional relationships that extended far beyond the confines of my humble financial planning sphere. Miguel from Wheels of Steel Taco Company. Yes, we had maintained contact. It turns out that assisting an individual in salvaging their business fosters a level of loyalty that transcends monetary value. And Miguel had connections, fellow food truck operators, catering companies, event planners, individuals who communicate with one another, share information, and remember past favors. The Morrison account had facilitated introductions to tech executives who, in turn, knew marketing directors who collaborated with social media managers adept at navigating the intricate flow of information in the digital age. The Pritchard deal had provided access to legal professionals who were acquainted with journalists, who understood the art of strategic communication, and the Westfield development portfolio, that had granted me entree to individuals capable of shaping or shattering someone's reputation with a few strategically placed phone calls. Ryan had designated Saturday, August 15th as the date for his extravagant family gathering, a full year and 3 weeks after he had commandeered my birthday. The irony was not lost on me. He had spent a full 12 months basking in the afterglow of his inaugural party catastrophe, recounting with relish the tale of how he had rallied everyone, salvaged a dire predicament, and transformed his monumental flop into a sort of heroic family saga. This time, however, the outcome would be markedly different. This time, I was thoroughly prepared. My strategic offensive commenced on Monday morning, precisely 5 days prior to Ryan's grand occasion. Not with a theatrical confrontation or a fiery outburst. That's amateurish. Instead, I initiated my campaign with a straightforward email to my contacts. Professional, measured, and factual. The subject line declared, sharing some context on family dynamics. The body of the message was a masterwork of subtle devastation. I eschewed any ranting, raving, or displays of bitterness. I simply presented the verifiable facts, bolstered by the extensive documentation I had painstakingly compiled. This included screenshots of Julia's social media posts from my birthday celebration, timestamps demonstrating her enjoyment at Ryan's event instead of attending my dinner, and audio recordings of her increasingly panicked voicemails, revealing her desperation when Ryan's initial party imploded and they required my intervention. Yet the most potent element was my mother's Facebook post, the one where she lamented my absence and my inability to assist. Instead of celebrating my own birthday, I had annotated this post like a legal document, highlighting phrases that unequivocally revealed my family's perception of me, not as someone to be honored, but as a resource to be exploited. I dispatched this compilation to a select group within my professional and personal spheres. Not to everyone, that would have been excessive. Only the appropriate individuals, clients who had evolved into friends, colleagues who knew me well enough to grasp the underlying circumstances, and neighbors who had personally witnessed the empty seats at my birthday dinner. The inherent power of truth lies in its ability to propagate organically. It requires no forceful promotion, no persuasive appeals. One simply needs to present it with clarity, and individuals will invariably draw their own conclusions. By Wednesday, the reverberations had begun. The Hendersons casually mentioned to the Petersons their observation of my family's no-show at my birthday. The Petersons relayed this to the Johnsons, who in turn informed the Millers, who happened to be acquainted with several guests invited to Ryan's ambitious lakeside celebration. Miguel, a true entrepreneur at heart, shared the narrative with his network of hospitality providers, not out of spite, but from genuine incredulity that any family would treat someone in such a manner. Word disseminated through the catering industry with astonishing speed. The Johnson family were, by all accounts, the type to abandon their own son's celebration, only to then solicit his aid when their own arrangements faltered. By Thursday, my story had reached the social media managers and marketing directors within my professional network. These individuals possessed a profound understanding of narrative and the profound influence perception wields in shaping reality in the digital age. They did not engage in any overt actions. They simply shared the account with their respective networks, framing it as a case study in how certain families prioritize outward appearance over genuine substance. The true masterstroke, however, arrived on Friday morning, a mere 18 hours before Ryan's party was slated to commence. I had reserved the most impactful element for last. A meticulously curated collection of evidence was transmitted to every single individual who had received an invitation to Ryan's lakeside gathering. This wasn't merely my family's testimony, but crucial context. It included screenshots illustrating the chronological sequence of events from my birthday, audio clips of Julia's increasingly desperate voicemails, and social media posts conclusively proving their decision to prioritize Ryan's initial party over my birthday, subsequently expecting my intervention when it failed. The message was succinct. Thought you should know what kind of people you're celebrating with this weekend? I initiated its dispatch at 8:47 a.m. on Friday, precisely as individuals were checking their phones with their morning coffee, formulating weekend plans, and anticipating Ryan's grand party. Subsequently, I sat back and awaited the inevitable repercussions. History, as they say, has a tendency to repeat itself. Sometimes it doesn't merely repeat. It returns with compounded interest and delivers a return on investment that would bring a tear of joy to Warren Buffett's eye. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, precisely 24 hours after I had launched my truth missiles into the digital stratosphere, my phone began to vibrate with that familiar cadence of panic, a sound I had encountered nearly exactly 1 year prior. This time, however, I was prepared. This time, I was comfortably situated in my backyard, a cold beer in hand, my laptop open to the folder meticulously labeled Mission Accomplished, observing the magnificent ensuing chaos unfold in real time through social media notifications and increasingly frenzied family communications. The initial indication that my strategy was succeeding emerged from an unexpected source: the Lake Harmony Lodge's Instagram account. At noon, they posted a cheerful congratulatory message to the Johnson family celebration, complete with images of their elegantly adorned pavilion and professionally arranged buffet tables. By 2:30 p.m., this post had been discreetly removed. By 3:15 p.m., a generic message, "A beautiful Saturday at the lodge," had been substituted, devoid of any specific event mention. It was at this juncture that my phone initiated its characteristic dance of desperation. Julia's call, the first in a series. I observed her name illuminate the screen, that same smiling photograph from our anniversary dinner, and took a long, satisfying gulp of my beer. Ryan's call, number 2, then 3, then 4. My mother's calls, 5 through 8, as her panic evidently rendered her oblivious to the fact that leaving 4 consecutive voicemails was not inherently more effective than leaving a single one. The inherent beauty of being prepared for pandemonium is that one can, in fact, relish it. I had absorbed the lessons from last year's birthday debacle. This time, I would not be left pondering the unfolding events. This time, I had a front row seat to the entire spectacular implosion, courtesy of the digital era and my carefully cultivated network of informational conduits. Miguel texted me at 3:22 p.m. "Dude, what the heck happened to your brother's party? Just got a call canceling the backup catering I wasn't even officially hired for. Something about changed circumstances." Sarah from my office, remember Sarah with the gas station wine, forwarded me a screenshot at 3:35 p.m. Someone in her neighborhood Facebook group had inquired if anyone possessed knowledge of the authentic narrative behind the Johnson family drama, as the gossip had apparently permeated suburban social media faster than a wildfire through drought-stricken land. But the true spectacle unfolded as I observed Ryan's social media profiles. The man had been diligently posting updates about his spectacular family gathering throughout the week, building anticipation as if he were promoting a major musical performance. This included photographs of venue reconnaissance, videos detailing his vision for the quintessential family celebration, and countdown posts adorned with inspirational aphorisms concerning the paramount importance of bringing people together. At 3:47 p.m., he posted a solitary sentence: "Due to unforeseen circumstances, today's event has been postponed. Thanks for understanding." Unforeseen circumstances, such as the direct ramifications of one's own actions, are akin to a natural disaster that no one could have conceivably anticipated. The commentary beneath that post presented a veritable masterclass in social media deflection and schadenfreude. Individuals posed inquiries regarding the cause, expressed concern, and offered assistance, but increasingly others who had clearly been privy to the authentic story posed pointed questions about familial loyalty and the hierarchy of priorities. "Hope everything's okay. Though I heard there was some drama about birthdays," posted someone named Jennifer, whom I did not recognize, but who demonstrably possessed excellent sources. "Unforeseen or just consequences," commented Dave Patterson, one of my clients who had unequivocally received my Friday morning informational packet and evidently felt compelled to share his perspective. By 4 p.m., My phone indicated 37 missed calls, distributed amongst the usual suspects. Julia spearheaded the tally with 14 attempts, trailed by Ryan with 11, my mother with 8, and even my father with 4. A remarkable feat, considering he typically communicates exclusively through grunts and expressions of profound disappointment. It was at this moment that Sophie finally made her appearance. Call number 38 originated from my daughter, and for a fleeting instant, I experienced a faint tremor of what might have been guilt. Sophie was 16, caught in the crossfire of adult dysfunction, likely bewildered and mortified by whatever social media imbroglio was unfolding amongst her peers. However, I then recalled her Instagram story from my birthday. Uncle Ryan's party is going to be lit, she had posted while I sat alone at Marcello's, awaiting family who never arrived. Call 38 went unanswered, much like the 37 preceding it. The voicemails began to accumulate like an impending blizzard, each one a shade more desperate, a degree more revealing than the last. I did not listen to them immediately. A portion of the satisfaction lay in allowing them to accumulate, in permitting the escalating panic to reach its zenith before I finally tuned in to ascertain their content. However, Julia's text messages were instantaneous and increasingly frantic. Call me right now. Whatever you think you're doing, stop. People are leaving. Everyone's asking questions. What did you do? This is our family you're destroying. Our family. Our family. The very same family that had collectively deemed my birthday unworthy of their presence, yet now suddenly claimed joint ownership when it was disintegrating. By 5:20 p.m., my phone displayed 51 missed calls, and I deemed it the opportune moment for the grand finale. I poured myself another beer, opened my laptop, and commenced listening to the voicemails in chronological order, akin to a connoisseur savoring a fine vintage that had been aging to perfection. Julia's initial message was a facade of feigned calm and damage control. Hey, honey, there's been some kind of misunderstanding about Ryan's party. Can you call me back so we can clear this up? Some people are saying they received some kind of email, and I'm sure it's all just a big mix-up. A big mix-up. As if the inadvertent transmission of documented evidence of their betrayal was a mere technical glitch rather than a deliberate act. Ryan's messages were more direct. What the hell, man? What the hell did you do? People are canceling. The caterer wants to know if we're still having the party, and Mom's crying, call me back. Mom's crying. Well, that was a novel development. In all my years of serving as the dependable, overlooked, taken for granted son, I had never managed to elicit tears from my mother. Yet apparently, confronting the consequences of treating me as disposable proved emotionally taxing for her. My father's voicemails were the most intriguing, as he typically abstained from emotional expression beyond mild disapproval and the occasional show of pride in Ryan's latest escapade. However, desperation had apparently unlocked an entirely new spectrum of paternal communication. Son, I don't know what's transpiring, but your mother is beside herself. People are calling, inquiring about some sort of family drama, and Ryan's party is falling apart. I know we haven't always... Look, can you just call us back? Please, please. When precisely had my father last uttered the word please to me concerning any matter? However, the true masterpiece resided in voicemail 43, when Julia finally abandoned all pretense and revealed the absolute core of the issue. You want to destroy our family because you're upset about a birthday party. You're willing to humiliate us in front of everyone we know because we missed one dinner. This is insane. This is cruel. And this isn't the man I married. The man I married was better than this. He was mature enough to handle disappointment without burning everything down out of spite. The man she had married was the dependable fixer, the understanding doormat, the individual who would suppress his hurt feelings and invariably appear when they required something. The man who would prioritize their comfort above his own dignity, who would smile and feign contentment while they treated him as if he were inconsequential. She was correct. The man she had married would never have engaged in such actions. But that man was no more, supplanted by someone who recognized his own intrinsic worth and possessed the courage to assert it. I concluded my second beer, closed my laptop, and entered my kitchen to procure a slice of leftover birthday cake. Yes, I still possessed some in the freezer from the previous year, as I apparently harbored a sentimental attachment to my own calamitous events. As I sat at my kitchen table, savoring cake that was precisely 1 year old, my phone buzzed one final time. Call number 52, Julia again. I gazed at that familiar photograph, that smiling countenance that had once symbolized love, partnership, and shared aspirations, and felt an absolute absence of emotion. Not anger, not sorrow, not even a sense of vindication. Merely a profound, peaceful emptiness, akin to the tranquility that descends after a storm, has subsided and cleansed the landscape. I deactivated the phone and set it aside. Outside my window, the sun was descending upon what should have been Ryan's spectacular family reunion. The celebration that was intended to affirm his capacity to unite everyone. The festivity that had demanded thousands of dollars and months of meticulous planning. Instead, it was simply another quiet Saturday evening, unequivocally mine. For the first time in my adult existence, I was not the forgotten one, the overlooked son, the dependable husband on whom everyone relied to resolve their myriad issues, while my own needs remained unaddressed. I was not the bedrock upon which others constructed their lives, all the while taking me entirely for granted. I was the man who had unequivocally departed, the man who had prioritized his own dignity over their convenience, the man who had smiled as they grappled with the inescapable consequences of their own decisions. And that smile, it was no longer directed at them. It was intrinsically mine,